Hey guys, welcome to another video. This week I'm going to be creating a fairy garden using this terracotta flower pot. And for this one I did make sure to buy the tray that goes with it. Now getting started, I'm just going to use my Ceramcoat sealant. This will help to make sure that the pot is primed and ready to go for when I go to paint it. I also bought this flower foam in order to fit inside the flower pot. That way I don't have to fill it completely in order to put stuff on top of it. I also have some felt here, and I'm going to use this as a base for the other things I'm going to put into my fairy garden. First, I just need to map that out, and to do that I'm tracing the foam piece onto a sheet of paper. Then I'll use my design as a template to cut out the felt. Ultimately, I settled on 4 separate pieces of felt that I would need, cutting out some brown for some dirt, green for grass, blue for a small pond, and then cutting out the pond from the green. That way the blue felt fits perfectly in that space. I'm also going to press down some of the flower foam, that way I can make an indentation for the actual pond. Then I'm just using red to mark a pathway and a spot for the house. Since I have the base of the fairy garden mapped out, it's time to move back to the pot. I do need to paint that before I start attaching everything together. I'm just going to go around the entire base of the flower pot and paint blades of grass coming up the sides. And it did take at least 2 coats to fully color in these blades of grass. Once the paint was dry, I used my super glue to attach the tray to the flower pot. And then I used some hot glue to attach the felt pieces to the flower foam while I waited for the glue to dry on the flower pot. And with all those felt pieces attached to the flower foam, I then hot glued the flower foam into the top of the flower pot. And the reason I pressed down the flower foam before for the pond was so that I could ultimately fill it with this blue glitter hot glue. And then for attaching these red aquarium rocks to the pathway, I'm using a red glitter hot glue. For the most part, it didn't really make a difference on the rocks because you really don't see the glue anyway. It is important though that I make sure I cover the felt to the edges. I don't want to see any of the seams of the felt pieces coming together. And while I have the aquarium rocks out, I'm also going to fill the tray of the flower pot. And finally, moving on to some of the details of the fairy garden. I'm going to be using my new super easy cutter to cut some popsicle sticks. This tool took a little bit of getting used to since I've never used it before, but ultimately made the job of cutting these popsicle sticks way easier than if I tried to use a pair of scissors or an X-Acto blade. It also kept the edges from becoming overly splintery. And these first few popsicle sticks are just going to be to line the edge of the fairy garden and the top of the flower pot. I ended up using a total of 23 fence posts to line the outside of the garden. And then for the house of the fairy garden, I'm just going to use some sticks. And using part of the template that I cut out earlier, I'm just mapping out how big the house needs to be and creating kind of like a TP shape with the sticks and gluing them together with hot glue. And besides the house for this fairy garden, there are a lot more details that I still want to add. Unfortunately, I ran out of time while making this video, and for next week's video, there will be a part 2 that finishes up this fairy garden and shows the final result. I hope you enjoyed the project so far, and I'll see you next week.